Hey everyone! Today on my DMing Basic series, although I guess I officially title it Dungeon Master Basics, in case people don't know what DMing is. But to be fair, if you don't know what DMing is, you're probably not going to get a lot from the series, but you know what? I'm overthinking it. It's easier to say out loud DMing Basics, but I digress. Today I am going to be talking about designing your first adventure. The last episode I talked about how to get about starting with world building and thinking about what kind of setting you want it to be. But this episode I'm going to be talking more concrete about what specifically you're going to have your players go through in their first 1 to 4 sessions or so. So let's jump right into it. So you can either have done some world building before this, or you can just jump into designing your first adventure. This is especially more useful for one-shots and short things where you necessarily don't want to do full world building. You just want to do what you need for the adventure, and oftentimes that adventure will inform the world building itself. So if you lay down this adventure you want to it was adventure for this dark sorcerer who was corrupting the all of the ministers of the realm, that might change that informs a lot of things. So there's this dark sorcerer that what is the opinion of magic, so there's ministers of the realm, what's the government form of the area, and that can help inform things based on different plot points. And essentially you can just make all the plot points first and then kind of design the world to fit those. But you can also have a world that you want to plot the adventure into, or adjust. One thing to remember is that I didn't talk about world building is that world building is an ongoing process, and don't feel bad to retcon things or change things that aren't super major. Even if it's already happened in session, if you said before the king had no siblings and had no heir, but you want ready to be okay, actually no, we're gonna say the king actually has an uncle that could inherit the throne because it fits with the story and stuff. There's multiple ways to handle this. One way is that the players heard false information, the uncle was in hiding and that link to the throne wasn't known. Or you could just talk to the players if it's come up and be hey, I said that, I'm actually changing it for the story, and that's okay. This isn't the final draft of some fantasy epic. You can change things as they go fit. And if you had said something in a session, change it. It doesn't matter. The only time I would say you don't want to do that is if the players have already made specific decisions about it and revolving around it. Say you're oh, there is there's no shipping going in and out of the city. But if there was already a whole adventure in exchange about securing, protecting a large number of merchants who are moving in and out of that city, that doesn't make sense to retcon. You might want to rethink what you're doing with the adventure itself. But moving into adventures themselves. So the first thing to do, and this is probably the easiest if you have the least amount of time, and it is going with a pre-built adventure. Something that someone else has written. Both Wizards of the Coast and Paizo and a bunch of other publishers make their own official adventures. You can find tons of them online, and you can kind of use them in tweak parts to fit the party, and like if you already have a world, like tweak the world, like you can switch out names of towns and people and gods and things like that, and you can make the adventure work for you. You can find adventures like of almost any topic, and of any length and level difficulty and whatnot. You can even grab adventures from other editions of the game if you're willing to put in a little bit more effort to like switch out like the magic item rewards and like the creatures and encounters and stuff like that, and doing a little bit of rebalancing, but you keep like the same base story of the world itself. But that said, I don't usually do that just because I really enjoy making my own world, and that's part of the game that I love the most. But that's not, some people just don't have as much time, and just kind of like want to get to the actual playing part, and that's totally fine. I'm probably not actually the person to like inform you like what's the best way to use precon, because I don't use precons, but even if you don't use them, it can be useful to read them though, and this is something I do, is that you can get a lot of like ideas for both like story hooks and like individual encounters themselves for like traps and puzzles and stuff like that you can like plop into your other stuff, and you can really it's kind of like the one of the best ways to improve as a writer is to read. I guess that would be the best way to improve as DM is to play D&D, but would be the proper like analogy, which is true. Play more D&D, you'll be a better DM. But also just reading what other DMs write and like reading other adventures and stuff. I mean, it's analogous to playing their own thing. Like obviously, like don't just like straight up lift like adventures from like a source that you know the players are listening to. Like if you know the players are listening to Crit Roll, don't just take one of the adventures in Crit Roll and put it in there, because otherwise it won't work. Unless you want to be like super clever and like have it start out like that and just be a complete twist on it. But then it's better if you have to make sure the whole group's in on the joke, like not joke, but in on like knowing what it's referencing, and they get the satirical spin on it, and like that's more complicated. And satire, satire. And the proper use of the word satire in a English sense, or not necessarily strictly English, but a literature sense. Yeah. So the next thing you do for designing your first adventure is to make it yourself. And there's many ways you can kind of like start out thinking about what you want to do for your adventure. And pretty much the first thing, how I design adventures is top down, usually. So I have a high level idea of like what I want to do. Like I want a murder mystery, like in this old spooky castle, and I want to solve the murder of this ghost that's been haunting the nearby villages, and they want to figure it out, and they all go to the spooky castle and like saying, and that's what I do. And that informs like a lot of what the adventure is going to be. Like, okay, adventure starts out, some people in the town like are complaining about this ghost which is haunting their towns and killing their cattle and I don't know, scaring their children, I don't know. And then they're like, okay, but it might be coming from then they like might do a little investigating in the town, then they go up to the castle, and then they go to like all the rooms like looking for clues, and they get different things about what's going on. They might like fight like things in this abandoned castles. They might like fight some undead or like some lesser ghosts or some animated furniture or rats or spiders or whatever other things you'd find in a spooky abandoned castle. And it might be like, I don't know, like that one isn't an adventure that like warrants kind of like a culminating boss fight. But like once you find out who it is, let's have it culminate in a boss fight where we find out that the mayor of this town is the murderer of this guy. So you go to confront the mayor, and the mayor turns out to be an evil sorcerer, and then they have to have a big fight and kill the mayor. But see, like you can start with this high level, like also that was totally just on the fly. I did not pre-script that. But it's like you can take these high level ideas and kind of like chop them up into smaller pieces and make an adventure. So to get that high level idea, there's different sources of inspiration you can go. One is to like just have like kind of like idea or trope, like I want to have a murder mystery. Like honestly, just for initial idea, just have the who, what, when, where, why. Or you don't have to have all of them, but like have at least 3 of them. So so murder mystery in this castle of this old like king, that thing, and like the who, which they don't know about, is like, oh, who was the mayor, and they might have pieces thing, and kind of like that drives it. Or if you want like, I want to have like a standard like hack and slash through the lair of the goblins that are pillaging the trade routes near the city. Or it's like some of the merchants complain about, oh, my last shipment was taken, and they have to go down there and just kind of like go to town on some goblins. So you can have like kind of those like standard fantasy trope things where you might have like a more unique idea on their own. Another thing to do if you have done world building already is, I don't know, like I said before, like if something in like the setting like informs kind of like an initial adventure or has an idea, you can grab it from there. Say for my world of the Elm Winds, this is the world which is like the world of slow apocalypse, where the world has been steadily getting colder and colder and colder. And a good like early adventure in that everyone loves fighting a dragon, but a white dragon has come down south with the dropping temperatures and following like refugees and stuff. And then there's been this white dragon that has been terrorizing this refugee caravan coming down south. And you have to kind of like get an adventure about it tracking them down and making its way up to its lair in the hills in this like icy cavern that it's formed, and you gotta slay the dragon. So that's one way. Like you don't have to like be conquering like the main like antagonist of the setting or like the main issues of the setting. It's like that adventure wasn't going straight to like what is the source of the cooling of this world. Like it wasn't going in there, but like as a side effect of that, there is the cooling dragon, like the icy dragons are coming south and coming down, and we're gotta take care of this. For generic RPG, like they're not gonna go straight up and fight the evil Dragon King, but they might be some of the Dragon King's minions, like a cabal of kobolds, have kidnapped the local like noble's daughter and are going to be taking her as a sacrifice to the Dragon King, to earn his favor. And you have to go rescue them, where you're not fighting the Dragon King, but like it is important to the story and kind of like the world that they've set up. So Dragon King, the world can inform it. Another thing you can do if you've had some world building or not at all, and you've done character creation and the players have kind of like told you the characters, is that you could have the campaign start as kind of like a hook of the character, where you can have this guy's one of the character's plots. They're a human monk, and they were dropped off at the monastery, and they've like finally finished up like their like initial training and stuff, and they've head off, but like they have the clue of a town and like this mysterious pendant they were left with, and the story is like the initial adventure can be kind of like trying to figure out who this pendant is. So it's a whole like investigating in this town, and the setting starts out with like them in the tavern trying to like find some people and people to help out, which just happens to be the other players in the party. And like it's like, okay, I need to figure out what this pendant is, and that can lead to an adventure that's kind of like investigating around town, and like then it leads to actually like it's actually connected to a bandit troop, and you don't know, and then this like very virtuous monk is all of a sudden it's like, wait, were my parents bandits and stuff like that, and you go there and try to figure it out. And I don't know, I've ever written this story, I've just made up it all on the spot, but going with like one of the player motivations is important. One word of caution though is like, try not to show favoritism for that player. Like, if you're gonna have specific adventures tailored towards a character, make sure in future adventures to have spotlight adventures on all the other characters. You don't want one character feeling like, you want the party feeling like you're favoriting like one character. Like, some groups are okay with like there being like a main character of the party, and like the party is kind of like following their story, and everyone else is kind of like supporting characters in that. But most adventures, you kind of want to have that balance of the importance of the actual characters in the group. So yeah, and if all else fails, just like look up stories online or look up precons online and kind of like see what their premises are and kind of like run with your own thing if you want to build your own adventure. So once you got a high level concept, you're going to actually make an adventure and kind of like break it down. So there's a few, like, I can like break it down into, one thing I should have said at the beginning of this video is that this is going, for your first adventure, this is going to be a very like structured adventure. It's not, because like nowadays, like, being that I'm more experienced and it's kind of like more campaigns, I do more free-form adventures where instead of being like, okay, here's this step, this step, this step, this step, this step, okay, maybe there's a branching choice here, and then converge again here, or maybe they are truly branching. I personally make my things more like as networks where like, okay, we're gonna start at this hub. And this is the tavern that they find in. And from this hub, they can actually go in many directions, and they can loop back around in other parts and different encounters, and many encounters may not actually show up, and locations may not be explored. But that's kind of like how I do mine. But I would not recommend that for an initial adventure. It just can be kind of complicated, and we're looking to make things as simple as possible. So like, one result of that is that you will probably have to railroad your characters a little bit, which is okay, especially when you're learning as DM. You're not trying to make the most like interactive story experience. You're still kind of figuring everything out, and the players will have tons of their own input. And even if you don't plan for things going, like even if you're not like planning to give them open reign on what they can do, they will find ways. And I will talk about contingency. Probably I'll have maybe the next video will be contingency plans for when things go off the rails. But yeah, but talking about that, so essentially you're going to want to like kind of like divide up the adventure into like parts, or almost like scenes. Like the easy way to imagine this is like rooms in a dungeon, where it's like, okay, we're going to do this first room where there's some guards and some skeletons. Next room, it's full of bugbears. Next room, there's an ooze that's infesting it, and so on and so forth. And kind of like, you have these very easily modular things. But if you're having like this like investigation in the city, you might have an initial setup be like, okay, we're like the first module is in the tavern, and kind of like trying to gather the information there. Or you might have like a larger module of going around the city and trying to like figure out who's going on. Okay, after that like encounter, you might be like, okay, so after they've been poking around a bit, some thugs hired by the mayor like show up and be like, hey, stop putting your nose where you shouldn't. And then they could either like negotiate their way out of that, or you could start a common encounter with these thugs. So for any given encounter, you should know what happens, what kind of NPCs are there, and is there going to be combat, or could there be combat? And if there's combat likely to happen, maybe tag or like know what the statistics of those guys will. So look in the monster manual or the bestiary for playing Pathfinder, and kind of like figure out what specifically, like, what are the stats of these thugs. So okay, first level human warriors, let's go. Okay, that works. And like know how many are them thing, and then rewards. Both like XP, so any given encounter can have like, I actually don't use XP. I honestly don't feel like it's very natural in tabletop RPGs. I have my characters level up when it makes sense in the story, so it's like I don't have them level up after like a specific thing, but like after the whole adventure, it'd be like, hey, you've reached level 2. Like when they've like figured out that they figured out this like investigation, and the mayor is the behind the murder and everything, and they defeat the mayor. Like, good job, you're now level 2. Instead of specific AXP. But if not, each edition handles how you give out XP differently. Be sure to give out XP for both combat and non-combat encounters. XP can be useful though if you have a party which is just very motivated by XP, and like it's a good way you can use them to encourage them to like roleplay more and like use creative problem solving and things like that. But I don't usually do that, and that might be a topic for another video. The other thing is rewards such as like gold items, magic items, that sort of thing. Every edition kind of like has like an ideal like loot progression. Like I know 4th and I think 5th has like tables of like, here ideally for like a party of 5, this is how much loot you should be giving on each level. So say like this whole adventure could be like, this is the first level adventure. Essentially you're gonna like look at that and you're gonna just parse that out throughout the adventure. What I do for my campaigns, which are more freeform, where they may not actually hit all encounters, is that I have a list of loot that I kind of like just give out throughout the course when like it makes sense. Yeah, so where it's kind of like, okay, so like I know I'm going to give them 500 gold, I know these magic items that I'm going to give out. The thing is, make sure you balance out magic items and rewards you're giving to people. You don't want to, again, you don't want to make sure there's lots of favoritism. Another thing to do is that not every reward has to be, oh, you loot the bodies and fight it out. It could be, oh, they were, let's say, loot the bodies, like, okay, so they defeat the mayor, they go back to the castle to, like, inform the ghost, like, we have avenged your death, and the ghost goes to, like, the fighter's sword, and it's like, here, one last gift for you, and takes the sword, and, like, and blesses it with ethereal essence, and it becomes a holy sword that does extra holy damage on every hit. Like, that's a good way to, like, give out, like, a magic sword without having to be like, oh, the mayor had the magic sword on his person. And, like, having just random loot in a pile and, like, the dragon's horde is fine. People like that. That's fun. But that's not the only way you can give out things. Like, you can give out, like, gold loot could be, given out by, like, oh, doesn't have to be, like, found or, like, given as, like, a reward or anything. It could be, like, if you have, like, a rogue and, like, they're having, like, some, like, they could be doing, like, some gambling in, like, a pub and stuff. If they roll well, you can, like, take money from the rewards and put it in there. But also secretly, if they do poorly in the gambling and lose money, take that money and put it back into the rewards and, like, give it up back later. Because the game does work best when there's, like, this even level of things and stuff. Another thing that players always like, almost even more than gold, when they get in their treasure, and it's very useful, is just make sure you throw in potions of healing, especially level 1 where they may not have them. At least early on, try to get their hands on some potions of healing, because stuff goes down, the healer goes down, and early on they don't have as many contingency plans for when things go bad in combat, and having some spare healing potions is very useful for them. So, yeah. So, once you have, like, in any given encounter, like, back to what I was actually talking about before I went on a million tangents, is for any given encounter, make sure you have, okay, what personalities are in there, be it like NPCs, like the monsters themselves. What is there going to be combat? What's the combat situation? If not that, like, what what's the skill, like what skills are going to be involved? Like, is it a skill challenge? Which I'm actually also going to be doing that whole episode on skill checks and how to use skill checks, and that's a more complicated thing. Like, if you like want like the whole, you might have like a skill challenge on like like you might have like a skill challenge be kind of like doing the investigation of like this wing of the old spooky castle and things like that. It's like, and then like what treasure they're gonna find. Like, and then one last thing I would probably like recommend for an adventure is have a few contingency encounters. This can be just like a random NPC that they meet. If it's like, okay, I want to have them run into this random merchant if they decide to like go on the road going the opposite direction that like might give them extra information. Or if they like fall into a combat situation that they want to maybe have like one or two like combat encounters, or at least know, like have in the back of your mind like what are some other monsters you might want to throw at them if they like decide to go into the woods that isn't like that. If they end up like they do terribly on some checks and get lost in the woods on the way to the castle, like you might have them like fight some wolves or something like that. And yeah, so having like a few contingencies, but again, I'm going to be doing a full video on contingencies, can be very helpful and kind of like reduce stress on you when things inevitably do kind of like go not exactly as planned. Yeah. So, and like I said in world building, try to like on any given adventure, I'd say a good number is to have like 5 like distinct NPCs at least. You don't have to interact with them all, but like have like 5 like with like ideas of like at least like a start of like what their personality is going to be. So like this ghost one. So obviously one of the ghost, you're gonna have the mayor. And you might have some others. You might have the barkeep who actually like might point you in the direction of this spooky castle, or you might have like not all NPCs have to be things. You could have the magical enchanted door to the castle that they actually have to have a real contest with, but the door like has like, I don't know, rhymes everything they say and things like that, and like that can be like an NPC personality, or like the ghost of one of the servants that they communicate with in the castle, and things like that, or the mayor's whatchamacallit, like clerk or like administrator. But yeah, so like there's lots of little things you can do of kind of like fleshing out that world and making it not just a string of encounters. And then, I mean, the base level, it is a string of encounters. And one last thing is to think about like what is the transition going to be between each of these encounters. Like in a dungeon, it's easy. It's like, okay, they walk through the door after they've done the last one. Okay, but it's like, how do they get from the city to the castle? And like, when you're trying to think of that might be a different encounter. It's like going through the woods and maybe they come across some wolves, or like they have to like figure out their way across this path, which is kind of like overgrown, or maybe even been destroyed by, or like hidden by the mayor himself to try to make sure no one else finds the castle. And that can like help inform maybe if like you have like a gap where you need to put a new encounter in the adventure. But yeah, so those are kind of like my main general pointers on like how to create your first adventure, from just getting everything going. If you have any questions like that, or things you're confused about or stuck on in this process, let me know. Give me a comment, shoot me a message, and I'll get back to you. And if you have any other talks of these videos for the Dungeon Master Basics series that you want me to do, just let me know. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a wonderful night. Good night.